Okay, we're going to start the Maamar a few hours early. Uh, Change of plans. I'm going to do a short one now and carry on. Hopefully, we'll finish in the next few days. Let's bring up the document. This is a Maamar the Rebbe said on his 50th birthday, Tafshin Yud Beis, 1952. Mamish was a year after the official Kabbalah Sanasios. The Rebbe said it in his office, called in a few chassidim, a list of people that were named in that years. Those are the early years. If you see photo number one, Maamar Musa, the whole Maamar Hashem from the Rebbe Marash. So there's actually a sicha. We'll see maybe after we finish the Maamar. There's a sicha the Rebbe said. There's a sicha in Torah Menachem about the leading up to this Maamar. Okay, so the pasuk is obviously in Tilim, so it's Kapitel Nun Aleph. So it says, which is the Rebbe was starting to say that Kapitel Tafshin Beis and Yeralf Nissan on his birthday. So Shnas HaChamishim. The pasuk says Hashem Sefosay Tiftachu Pi Yagid Tilasecha. Hashem Sefosay Tiftach, God should open our lips. If Yagid, we should say, our mouth should tell over Tilasecha Hashem's praises. Now, obviously, this is a pasuk that we all know that we say before Shemona Esrei. Pasuk. What is this pasuk? The Rebbe says, "Hu bakoshes David HaMelech." This is David HaMelech's quest. Bakoshes, and because David says it, so therefore it's a bakosha, also of Knesset Yisrael, of the multiple of the Jewish people, the places where the Knesset of all the Jewish souls are, and individually bakoshes kol echad v'echad Yisrael. It's the quest of every single individual Yid. And that's what we all say it before we daven 3 times a day. The Shemona Esrei. And it's been established that we say it before the davening. Kedisa b'Gemara, the Gemara Brachas tells us, Rabbi Yochanan says, before davening one says, Hashem Sefosay Tiftach. And nobody talks about the subject talking about Smichas Geula and Tefillah, the idea of that we should have redemption next to Tefillah, the idea of Gal Yisrael should be next to the Tefillah, which essential Tefillah is Shemona Esrei. When we say Tefillah, we're talking about Shemona Esrei, which is the Tefillah of Haidah, acknowledgement. So we meaning to say that, like we learned this morning in the Torah, in the Torah, that the davening kind of has two sides to it. You have the element of the davening of Haidu, which is the initial acknowledgement, or even earlier before that, Moidani, the Haidah of a Yid when you wake up, building to that after, of course, Karbanis, etc. We have the which is getting a person ready in the mind frame. In Chassidus, we talk about how it goes from Moidani until Baruch Shamar is the section of Haidah, of initial Haidah. Then you have the Pesukei de Zimra, which is the idea of songs of praise, the getting that into the mind frame of his blindness of Brias Olamus, that's a more familiar term. Memali Kolam, how Hashem fills the world, created the world. And then from there we go to the brachas before Krishna, which are talking about the Malachim and the Avos and Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem. So we're getting into the emotions of it. So it's a higher madrega, closer to our personalizing the idea of the tefillah, the idea of the connection, the idea of his blindness. Because the whole point of the davening is this blindness. So that we say Shema Yisrael, we actually mean it. We know what it means. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's a conclusion of everything that we've built up to. And because of that, the point is because of that we love Hashem. So we properly love Hashem b'chol at the end, and that's with whole davening. You're talking to the Yetzer Hara, really the Nefesh Bahamas. So the Bechor Ravcha B'Shnei Yitzirecha, that the entirety of the person understands we have, and then from there we go into the two remaining parashas of Krishma. So that's kind of one way that shows that the the high point is Shema Yisrael. The whole davening sleep that we should say Shema Yisrael, and therefore we can feel V'Havta. But once we've already reached V'Havta, and therefore our awareness and consciousness of what of importance and what is our focus and what the purpose of our life is and what we're doing, like the Rebbe says, is so then we daven Shemona Esrei, which is the Tefillah. We have, of course, Kol Yisrael, the Geula before that. Is that now we've reached that we're a different person, and when we're davening, therefore that's the second level of Vodah, which is Shemona Esrei, like Yehuda. In the Maamar of Torah, it says Reuben, Shimon, Levi builds up. Leviah is Vayomer, therefore builds up. Vayatzif builds up to the idea of Yehuda, but that Yehuda is only is Yaducha Achecha. Yehuda has to thank his brothers. It means it's the Krishma that allows the person to stand and ask the bakashas, the needs that you have, the material needs that you have, the monetary needs that you have, the refuah shalem, baruch aleinu, parnasa. Those are the questions that you're asking for things that you need. It's begashmis. The point is that your gashmis is focused and is hand in hand with your ruchnis. Like the Rebbe says, an Eibusha gives a yid gashmis, and the yid makes him the gashmis ruchnis. Because the yid, when you get to that clarity, where a person's hopefully holding Shemona Esrei, we should get there. But that's the goal. Is that when we're asking with the clarity that the baruch aleinu and the rifeinu is all connected to v'ahavta, and built on the v'ahavta. That's why it says Yehuda ati duchachacha. Okay, so back to the Maamar. So this is. So in the Gemara and Brachas, it says there's supposed to be nitmach geula letefillah. You have to have the geula next to the tefillah. So I'm going to be Tefillah Hashem Sefosay tiftach. First we say Hashem Sefosay tiftach. That's the pasuk from the Nalef before we start the Shemona Esrei. V'tzarich lavin tnei ma tiknu lehem rekodim tefillah mida davka lefnei kol tefillah. If the idea seemingly is just like it's kind of an opening statement that Hashem Sefosay tiftach that we should daven properly. So we should say it like we say Hareinu Makabel. We should say before Hareinu Makabel or right before Shri Bana. We should say Hashem Sefosay tiftach, starting from the beginning of Tefillah. The whole Tefillah should go properly, and then we should have a Yaftan, and then we have Shemona Esrei in the way of Yehuda and Vahidah. But why do we say it specifically before Shemona Esrei? B'fnei Krishma, Brachasel, b'fnei Pesach Zimra. We should say before Krishma, before the blessings of Krishma, before Pesach Zimra, before Baruch Shema. We'll be actually moving a bigger issue over here. The Rebbe says is that the Gemara Sham Isa the Rav Bruna Samach Geula L'Tefillah. The Rav Bruna would make sure that he said the Tefillah next to Geula, which is the Gal Yisrael, and he had a smile the whole day. Meaning because it was a positive thing. So it says, how could you have that we say Hashem Sefosay tiftach? Rabbi Yochanan says, how did he have Geula to Tefillah? Rabbi Yochanan says you have to first have Hashem Sefosay tiftach. So how does he have Geula to Tefillah? And we know that he's supposed to have Geula to Tefillah, like Rabbi Bruna says. Rabbi Yochanan says we have Hashem Sefosay tiftach. Seemingly Hashem Sefosay tiftach is the hefsek, is the separation between the Gal Yisrael and the first bracha. So the Gemara answers that Mishani, the Gemara answers the given to Kavura Bonim Tefillah Arikhta Dami. That is part of Tefillah. The Hashem Sefosay tiftach is considered what's called the Tefillah Arikhta. This is all Gemara questions in the Talmud. L'chure, Mekim Shesmechas Geula Tefillah Hi Inina the Kokach In Kein Lama Kongo Amir Pasuk Zelf Nation. It's a question like that. We have to have an answer that's Tefillah Arikhta. I mean, to say that it's still considered mitzvah. Some Geula L'Tefillah. Why? Because Hashem Sefosay is like his own Tefillah. But you have to come up with an answer. So why can't you just put Hashem Sefosay if it's important to say it at another point, like you said before at the beginning of the Tefillah? Like this, then you don't have to give an answer that's a Tefillah Arikhta, and therefore it's not a separation between Geula and Tefillah. Just to have the Geula go straight into the proper Tefillah means the beginning of the first bracha, Mogen Avraham. And we say Hashem Sefosay tiftach at another point, an earlier point, because anyways it's just helping us get to daven better. I mean, it's like a Hareinu Makabel. In theory, not to bring that strong Hareinu Makabel, but it's kind of a general statement before a person goes into, so to say, the base measures, the basic lessons. So he says, like, then we have to answer the we should just put it at the beginning of the dam. Then we would have properly the Goral Yisrael before the Shemona Esrei without saying that Hashem Sefosay Tiftach the Tefillah Arikhta. And we would also say Hashem Sefosay Tiftach before the beginning of the Pesukei Zemer, before after Yishtabach, before Yishtabach, etc. Okay. Just to jump ahead, we don't have the full Maamar. But to jump ahead, the idea is that clearly Hashem Sefosay Tiftach, that to daven properly, you need Hashem Sefosay Tiftach. That's the Nekuda. The point over here is that for davening to be the davening that it's supposed to be, for us to be on the level and the focus the way we're supposed to be, to mean then it's dependent on Hashem Sefosay Tiftach. So that's the reason I'm jumping ahead is because it's kind of a little bit difficult, this little section here. But then we're going to get to this point of the idea of Hashem Sefosay Tiftach is how the person properly davens. It means without Hashem Sefosay Tiftach, your tefillah is a whole other kind of tefillah. It's a much lower level. Hashem Sefosay Tiftach elevates the tefillah of the person that the Shemona Esrei is the proper Shemona Esrei, and it's taka, then it's taka niftach geula tefillah. Just as when you do it, smichas geula tefillah. What's the whole idea that we need to have? Geula means redemption next to davening, which is we know from the Maamarim, the Hasidic idea that's brought down in already by Yigash, that by Yigash Elav Yehuda is nismach geula tefillah. That Yehuda goes to Yosef and says, "Bi Adoini." He wants from the geula for the help with the tefillah. So he said, "We know you need to do it. Shesmichas geula tefillah u'ini nagoshes Yehuda liYosef." It's when Yehuda approaches Vayigash Yehuda to Yosef. Yehuda who u'ini tefillah. Yehuda is the davening, meaning Shemona Esrei. Zelmash Yehuda who al Hashem apam oida zavayim. And we know that Yehuda is named after the idea of the Leah says, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and by Yehuda says, "Apam oida zavayim." Now I acknowledge Hashem. Acknowledge. Now again, in Chassidus we learn that the Moida Ani and the Hoidu, which is also Hoidah, is a different level of Hoidah, like the Rebbe explains in Torah, than Yehuda. Yehuda's Hoidah is a bittul that's beyond Kriya Shema. It's because of the Kriya Shema you have that Leah stops having children after Yehuda. She takes a break. Why should she take a break? Because Yehuda is bittul, and bittul is not moiled. One of the ideas of bittul is you're not projecting. To be moiled, you have to be projecting. Yehuda is a moment of bittul. Because of bittul, you're not moiled. She doesn't give birth. But a pamoid is not a pamoid, an acknowledgement. Okay, if you say so, or I agree, but it's an acknowledgement from deep understanding and appreciation. Yehuda ati duchachecha, built on the foundation of Reuven Shem Levi, which is Kriya Shema. So, but the idea is that it's a hoidah. B'sfiras kai asfiras malchus, and this is the way malchus. Now we know malchus is divided into two levels. This malchus, the way it is. Let's say if we're talking about malchus of Atzilus, so you have the Esser spheres, which are the 9 spheres from Chachma through Yisoid, which are the actual spheres. Yisoid, of course, is Makabel from all the other ones. The kindness, Gvura, severity, Tveres is the middle. Netzach and Hoid are the two extensions of Chesed. Let's say the perseverance and acknowledgement of pushing through the resolve of the midos. That means their levarmi gufe outside the body. The body itself is chesed v'ur tveres. Yisoid is the to me makasher. All that, everything that's the resolve that's been there, the midos as they've been developed. So you be makasher it. It's the end point, so to say, like the end point of the person. It's the bris, and malchus is the receptacle. Malchus is makabel, but there's malchus the way she's makabel in Atzilus. And then there's Malchus, how Malchus becomes the opening point, like in Malchus is Dibur. So if we're talking about, say, in a person, right? So a person speaks, speech itself is the conclusion of what's going on inside of you. You have different things going on inside of you, and you express it through speech. So that's how you communicate forward to someone else. So I think this would be all one. Hashem is Iu Hashem is light and is built of one. Where are we going into the world? When does the world of separation start? That's the world of Bria, the world of creation. Malchus is that can do it. Like speech would be the way you do communicate outwards. That's what, if you open up the Pesach Yom, that Malchus is Peh. So in this case over here, Malchus has two sides. It's Mekabel, like the person with the speech, which is the receptacle. Let's say if you're giving the example of speech, the receptacle, and then this thing implies Malchus is the same idea like Malchus as Kipshute, meaning royalty. Royalty is also is a conclusion of everything that's going on inside. Why is this person? I mean, it's not talking about a person who's necessarily just born into royalty, and usually there's something there that the person has, an element that the regular person doesn't have. That's why the person ends up being a king. But besides that, but royalty, let's say David HaMelech, right? It's not the Malchus comes out as though it's totally bottled, but there's a lot going on behind that, and the Malchus is therefore is the way the king projects himself to the people. So, but the Am is separate, and that's already the world of separation, the world of Bria. So there's the Malchus, the way it's the conclusion of Atzilus, of the Ecospheres, and now at the beginning, it creates the Keser, so to say, the crown going into the next world, which is Bria. It's the connection. So he says, when you do Shesmichas Geula Tefillah, what does it mean to daven that the Geula comes close to the Geula, to redemption, which is Hagoshes Yehuda Yosef. Yosef is Geula, Yisoid, and Yehuda is Malchus. The Yehuda who in Tefillah. Zamash Yehuda Al Shem Apam Oid Zishvaya, which is the idea of acknowledgement, which is the silent. That's why it's a silent prayer. It's a prayer of Bittul, B'Sfira Kala Sfira Malchus. How you read this, that goes down, like I said, it's going into the next world to be at the world separation. Why? Because in the separation, you have to be involved in that. What makes something separate? By definition, because there's parts that are not obviously godliness. Klipas Noigan and all the potential for even Klipas Shalosh Klipsat Tmeyas is only starts from the world of Biyah. And therefore you have to move forward the sigim, the impurities, right? Like you have a sigim of the impurities in silver, right? You have to in order to break it, and that's what we say. Avram Shiyatzim Menu Yishmael, Yitzchak Yatzim Menu Esav, that the refining Avram, extreme Avram Chesed, so the stainless, the left, the separation, the discharge, the waste of Avram is Yishmael, the waste of Yitzchak is Esav. And that's so how do you separate something? Because in the world we don't find that separation. Birur means, what does it mean to be mevarer? What's the other about birurim? Just like you're separating food when you make a bracha and you eat it, and you separate within yourself. You have a lot of parts of it that everyone knows. You have to, and like silver, you have to get, there's 99.9 and 99.99 and 99.49, and like how refined is it? So you have to refine yourself to get rid of all the ego, kavod, agenda. These are all things that have to be refined. So who does that? That's Malchus, the Barbaruri. It talks about Malchus that she gives to her family. That's to give. That's the separate. Yosef, Yosef is redemption and salvation. It empowers Malchus to be Mivar. So Malchus receives is a makabel from Yisoid, like in relationship, is intimacy between the man and the woman. So the man is represented by Yisoid, and the woman is Malchus. So the man gives to the woman. So it's Sfiras Malchus. Yosef provides for everyone. It's like Yisoid is providing. Different than what Malchus is being provided. Because Malchus is actually in. That's what it says. Yeredes. It goes into. And therefore, that's in there's impurities even within the process, because Yosef is mashpia, that he's separate from it. He's mashpia l'chol amaris v'hashpaz v'ikam kasher sfiras malchus yibrid v'biyah. As it goes down to biyah, it says Yosef sheb'shnei hasarva yifun barak al shnei harav, that he was able to have in the good times, in the fat times, enough to provide for the weaker times, which represents the idea of birurim. Things are not so simple. There's sava and there's rav. There's abundance and then there's a famine. I know we need to say shahash ba'asai. He's able to provide even in a situation of a famine. What does it mean to connect redemption, salvation to davening? It's chibur yesod zeramp and the midos with malchus. We're going to stop here, mid sif. because I want to explain this properly. I don't want to rush this concept. It's not so simple. And we'll pick up tomorrow. It's a short Maamar. It's only 5 pages, and today's only Monday. So like I'm marking over here, holding the Zah. I'll pick up from tomorrow. We'll go a little bit back a bit and go forward to try to break up this Maamar into a 3-day study. All right. Shkoyach. Have a wonderful day.